I'm Hannah.
And I'm Sam.
And we are your hosts for this evening. And this is Dr. Myrteza.
Hi.
Who will also be joining us. Today's episode will discuss a northern Queensland community named Mareeba.
Any health professional working in rural and remote locations will face a number of challenges, such as access to services, interdisciplinary challenges, and personal and professional issues.
Tonight, our program contains information for dentists who may be thinking of living and working in Mareeba. Later on in this program, we will cross over to two special guests who will give us an insight into the life of a health professional in a rural, remote area.
Mareeba is a town which is located 64 kilometres west of Cairns at the northern end of the Atherton Tablelands. It is classified as an outer regional town. It is a 50-minute drive from Cairns, which has all the amenities of a big city. There are about 12,000 persons residing within the community, of which 14% is Indigenous. Mareeba has an extensive rural community and supports the growing of crops such as sugar, mangoes, citrus, lychees, bananas, peanuts, tea tree, and other small crops. It is believed Mareeba means meeting of waters in the local Aboriginal language. I will now give you some information in regards to weather, transport, and shopping. Mareeba on average has 300 sunny days per year with two distinct seasons, summer and winter. During summer, there is heavy rainfall with an average of 903 millimetres falling between January and April. The winter months have little rainfall with average temperatures falling between 5 to 25 degrees Celsius. There are various forms of transport available in Mareeba, including train, bus, taxis, and air transport. The roads on the way to Mareeba are generally well maintained, and there are multiple ranges available to access to Mareeba. As Mareeba is a farming community, there is access to fresh produce daily in the supermarkets, roadside, and weekly markets. Ergon supplies electricity to the town, and reticulated water is supplied by the council. No boiling of water required. Other shops available include a chemist, butcher, hardware store, newsagent, hairdressers, and 3 service stations. There are a number of leisure activities in Mareeba, including bowls clubs, RSL, gyms, restaurants, the Mareeba Drive-In movies, and many outdoor activities. The communication systems are adequate within Mareeba, with all major telephone services available throughout the division. There is access to commercial TV and radio stations, as well as ADSL broadband services. All banking facilities are available within the division, and FPOS is available in most businesses.
17% of people working in Mareeba are labourers. The unemployment rate is 7%, and the mean individual income is $476 per week. Mareeba has a state high school, years 8 to 12, with approximately 600 students. Additionally, a primary school also has 600 students. There is also a Catholic primary school and a new high school which commenced in 2006. There are also several preschools and kindergartens situated within the centre. Mareeba has a large district hospital which consists of 52 beds. The hospital is staffed 24 hours a day. Medical specialists are located in Cairns, and the nursing headquarters are usually available for students studying and working at Mareeba Hospital. There are several doctors practicing in 3 medical centres. There are 2 private dental clinics, Mareeba Dental Care, which has 2 practicing dentists, and My Mareeba Dentists, which has 4 practicing dentists and an oral health therapist. Both practices provide a comprehensive range of dental treatments. There is also a public oral health service within the hospital available, which provides free dental care to eligible patients. However, patients who require non-emergency care are placed on a 2-year waiting list. Mareeba has a variety of health services available, but for specialist appointments, patients need to travel to Cairns. Mareeba also provides culturally appropriate health services, such as the Indigenous Health Centre. There is also a health facility in Shanty Creek, which operates as a therapeutic community and provides residential rehabilitation to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men and women.
People living in rural areas tend to have shorter life expectancies and higher levels of illness and disease risk factors than those in major cities. They also have higher rates of hospitalisation and are more likely to engage in behaviours associated with poorer health, such as smoking and drinking alcohol in harmful or hazardous quantities. The main contributors to higher death rates in regional and remote areas are coronary heart disease, other circulatory diseases, motor vehicle accidents, and chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases such as emphysema. These higher mortality rates relate to differences in access to services, risk factors, and the regional remote environment. Supply of medical specialists and dentists decreases with increasing remoteness. Additionally, as remoteness increases, the average number of hours worked by health professionals increases. We will now cross over to Niels Kirsten, who is a registered nurse working in an Indigenous health centre within Mareeba, who will discuss the most prevalent health issues seen in the clinic, also how to effectively work with Indigenous Australians.
There are a number of health issues. The main one that I see is a lot of mental health issues such as depression, anxiety. A lot of schizophrenic patients come through there as well due to drug related. There's a lot of medical conditions such as diabetes, which is one of the most, particularly because a lot of them are Indigenous and come from an alcoholic background. My role as a support work, I do a lot of night shifts. And basically I facilitate a safe environment for the residents of Queensland Drug and Alcohol Council. The majority of the residents are Indigenous, because we are an Indigenous organisation. However, we have non-Indigenous come through and seem to fit into the community very well. It is relatively safe. The assessment in order to get into this rehab is very strict. However, we do have residents coming from a lot of the prisons, such as Lotus. However, they are under strict observation and they're assessed in detail whether they can fit in and whether they cause harm or not, or have the ability to cause harm. In the time I've worked there, we've had times where there have been segregation between black and whites, and there's been disputes, racial disputes. However, once we start to feel that, when you sort of step in this community, you can sort of feel the tension, and it's brought to a community meeting straight away, and it's resolved. I find as being an Indigenous worker, I can communicate with the Indigenous. However, I think with my growing up with both sides, my father being Indigenous, non-Indigenous, my mum being Indigenous, my communication changes. So when I approach an Indigenous person, my body language, communication, the way I'd speak to an Indigenous person changes compared to someone I wouldn't, someone who's non-Indigenous. When you sort of come into a community, an Indigenous community, you sort of got to address what they like is when you sort of recognise the traditional owners. So that's one thing. Every time I'm speaking to Indigenous people in a tribe that I'm originally not from, I acknowledge them and I pay my respect to the elders. When you communicate with an Indigenous person, your body language says everything. Eye contact. I know from when I was a kid, if someone stared me in the eye, my head would drop, because it was as if it was dominant. And you'll see that throughout all Indigenous people. You don't sort of, the way you sort of stand, you don't want to stand too close or too over the top as if you're dominant. And Indigenous people do not like body contact. Shaking hands, for instance, males don't shake hands. A lot of non-Indigenous males squeeze the hand in a handshake very firm. That's to an Indigenous person is a sign of intimidation. In rural and remote areas, is that around these areas there's Indigenous health organisations. So knowing the Indigenous health organisations around and knowing the needs within the community, you'd be able to effectively approach the needs. A lot of Indigenous people live in below socioeconomic background, so the education is poor, transport's poor, community services are poor. Diabetes, residents with diabetes, if you step into the community that I work, the ones with diabetes have very bad periodontal disease, a lot of gum diseases. A lot of them are heavy smokers. A lot of them are chronic drinkers.
Thank you for that wonderful insight, Niels. As a dentist working in a rural remote location, there are many professional management issues such as scope of practice when working in rural and remote settings. We will cross over to our special guest, Dr. Kevin Ang, a practicing dentist who has had experience working in rural and remote locations.
It's to put it in a sentence, probably it's challenging yet satisfying. Okay. The scope in dentistry, I guess, because as a graduate dentist, you only been exposed to a very limited scope in dentistry, really, right? I mean, I don't remember doing a molar endo, for example, and guess what? I had to learn how to do it and how to do it because either I help the patient out or they have to travel. All right. But in terms of other allied fields, yes, because I'm not a trained nutritionist, but we talk about nutrition and acid and sugar and whatever, right? We're not an occupational therapist, but we talk about, oh, you're not brushing that well, so we need to be able to change the toothbrush for you. We don't. There's no one out there, so you're it. So unfortunately, yeah, you do have to get outside your scope. Another one would be, you're not a medical doctor, but sometimes you need to say, look, you need to go and see a doctor because I can recognize that there's a problem medically. So you're outside dentistry as such, all right. But I think our new courses are focusing more on changing you guys into dental physicians more than just a tooth carpenter, for example. Okay, so I think that's a good thing, because that's the human body or the patient comes in and they've got more problems than just teeth, right? And they've got other things that might affect the dentistry. So you need to be able to point them in the right direction. So you got anaesthetists, you got medical the medical allied staff, the nurses and the cleaners, but the whole group, and if they work as a team for the betterment of the patient, I think that's a good thing. The challenges come from because in Queensland Health, as you might know, there's some doctors that might not speak very well in English, okay, and it's the same challenge trying to communicate, or the way that they were trained is different from what I normally would be considered. Okay, this is what we know in Australia, and they've come from overseas, whether it's South Africa or India or wherever, and they've got a slightly different view or way of doing things. It's different. So you go, okay, well, but for the betterment of the patient, we should be doing this.
What advice or strategies would you suggest for working in an effective interdisciplinary team? Given the mixture of skills and professional backgrounds and the complexity of interdisciplinary collaboration, a diversity of views and differences of opinion are inevitable. Conflict is both necessary and desirable in order for a team to grow. From my experience in working in interdisciplinary teams in rural areas, these are some of the effective professional management strategies I would suggest. Set standards for accomplishing tasks and identify norms for team behaviour. Keep the door open for less talkative members and encourage each to contribute. Seek harmony when conflict occurs by listening carefully and respectfully to all opinions, brainstorming possible solutions and focusing on common interests. seek consensus in arriving at the best decision, give and receive feedback about positive and or negative behaviour, and lastly, review and evaluate progress at conclusion of interaction. So the most important thing is to be positive, be open-minded, and just respect the others within the team.
There are many personal issues that come with working in a rural, remote area, including geographic, social, and professional isolation. Dr. Myrteza, what were some of the personal issues you came across in your time in Mareeba?
The issue I experienced was separating my personal life with my professional life. I would walk down the street of the town and some of my patients would run up to me and ask, "Hey doc, can you take a look at my tooth?" I would find it very difficult to explain to the patient that this was not an appropriate time or place to discuss this. I've also listed a few other personal issues that you may come across, such as social isolation, which Mareeba, it's not too bad, it's not that rural. Making new friends and colleagues is always might be hard, and also maybe spouse employment, so it's hard for them to get a job, or if you have children, for them to go to school, finding a new school, that's always hard. There are some strategies I've used to manage these situations, such as maintaining confidentiality, developing clear boundaries, keeping records, and learning to manage sensitive conversations. Also, other important ones, clarify your role in the team, that's a big one. And be prepared to be asked for information. In such a small town, you're going to be looked up to and they'll often come to you for advice. In order to stay sane in such a small town, you need to firstly get to know the local area you're involved in, and also get involved in the recreational activities. During the week, I would play a game of golf. I would attend the Mareeba Rodeo every year, and I'd also play basketball during the nights. I'd also make sure I had some time to visit my friends and families who lived down in Cairns. I also ensured that I attended the local cultural festivities to become culturally aware within the community, considering Mareeba has quite a few Indigenous people living in it.
Working in a rural, remote environment can be very challenging in regards to both personal and professional factors. It is important to have strategies to overcome these difficulties.
A few important points to take from today's episode is to 1. Get to know the community. 2. Partake in community and leisure activities. 3. Become culturally aware. 4. Set clear boundaries between personal and professional life. And 5. Be prepared to work in an interdisciplinary team.
Thank you, Dr. Myrteza. I would just like to say thank you to all our special guests today. Tune in next week at the same time, where we'll be going to Africa to battle poachers to save its wild lions.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Hannah.
And
Good night.